has evolved, reaching some significant milestones after CNOOC Uganda Limited and its joint venture partners signed the final investment decision. Land for the construction of different facilities was acquired and compensation was fully made. Cash and in-kind compensation, like resettlement houses for all families, were built and handed over to the project-affected persons. Construction commenced for different aspects of the project, leading to the development of facilities such as the camps, well pads, the central processing facility, and feeder lines, followed by the delivery of the rigs and installation. Spudding was done in January 2023. There have been promising drilling outcomes, with 7 wells drilled in pads 2 and 3. Drilling operations, coring and on-site works are continuing, achieving total footage of approximately 23,000 meters. Other noticeable activities include a base station and permanent camp, solar turbine transportation, EPC 3-tank erection work, and EPC 4 pipeline trenching. CNOOC will actively promote the LPG integration plan, which will gradually achieve the strategic transformation towards a green and low-carbon energy supplier. A camp-integrated hydropower project has been set up, which will result in carbon dioxide emission reduction by 3,156 tons. CNOOC has continued to contribute to the Belt and Road, people-to-people exchanges, enhancing China-Africa friendship and promoting the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. CNOOC collaborates with various Ugandan universities to enhance graduate employment curriculum design and research. We have signed agreements with several institutions to support scientific research and develop talents in the oil and gas sector. CNOOC, in collaboration with 5 other Chinese companies on the Kingfisher project, spearheaded a drive that led to the donation of $500,000 to upgrade the infrastructure of the Entebbe Welfare School. This is the largest donation to education in Uganda.
On behalf of the Ministry of Education and Sport, I would like to extend my gratitude to CNOOC Uganda Limited and the contractors of Kingfisher Oil Fields for your commitment to the cause of vulnerable and challenged children.
CNOOC sponsors international scholarships, sending Ugandan students to study in China. Under this program, a total of 11 students have been sponsored and 8 have since graduated and are currently working in the oil and gas industry.
This scholarship to me is a dream come true. I'd always wanted to receive a first-class education from a good school, and CNOOC has provided me with this opportunity, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
CNOOC focuses on training and certification programs for skills needed in the oil and gas industry, which promotes local employment and strengthens Uganda's logistics and industrial capacity. Over 150 contractors and more than 3,000 individuals have been trained in various oil and gas skills. The company collaborates with local vocational schools to provide welder training, significantly contributing to Uganda's professional welding sector.
They took the initiative to sponsor us who are underdogs, and they want to put us somewhere. We thank them a lot. There's nothing much we can give them, but maybe use the skills properly so that they can also feel they have done some impact in the Uganda we have now.
CNOOC Youth Employment Support Program has trained over 350 local youths in various vocational skills, improving their employability and living conditions. These trainings cover welding, heavy truck driving, heavy machinery operation, engineering construction, and other skills needed in the oil and gas field development, as well as driving, tailoring, and hairdressing, among others. CNOOC invests in projects to improve community living standards, such as providing clean drinking water to over 13,000 residents in Buhuka flats, carrying out medical camps and building resettlement houses with modern amenities for 56 households. We have also invested $620,000 in maintaining critical roads and enhancing public safety. Livelihood restoration programs include donating livestock and teaching scientific breeding methods. We also work closely with the Confucius Institute of Makerere University, supporting events like the Chinese Bridge Competition and the Sound in My Heart Chinese Song Competition. CNOOC also organizes activities to celebrate Chinese culture, such as the Spring Festival. These efforts enrich cultural communication and foster mutual understanding between China and Uganda.
CNOOC Uganda Limited is committed to education and capacity building to fulfill its vision of energy for Uganda.
Good evening, viewers. You are once again welcome to the CNOOC Online Enterprise Development Program that has been happening for the last 7 days Welcome once again. Thanks for being good viewers. Thanks for being good learners. And thanks for following and at least learning from our consultants that have been here. We also thank CNOOC Uganda that has really sponsored this from the time we started up to today. And we also thank all the presenters, the consultants, the coaches, and the mentors that have been here from 28th when we had Mr. Eric Jumba, who was here to officially open up or launch the training. Mr. Eric Jumba, the National Content Manager of CNOOC Uganda, was here with us. For those that have been following us, remember that he was here to officially launch the training, and he really talked about a number of issues and expectations. And I hope for today, all of you have at least achieved the expectations that Mr. Eric Jumba talked about. Hope all of you have learned quite a number of things when it comes to doing business. How do you do business with CNOOC? What are you supposed to do? What are the requirements? You know, because we have been talking about compliance. Are you compliant? Have you been compliant? What are you required of? This training was organized specifically to help you learn and know what you're supposed to do when you're in this oil and gas sector. We have had several consultants here, trainers. We started with Mr. Senoga Robert, who was here to teach us about taxation. He taught us about FRIS, payee. He was basically talking about compliance when it comes to tax regime and what the taxman wants from you as a business. Then we had Ms. Lydia Wanyana, who was here trying to tell us about procurement, bidding. She had a very wonderful lecture here with us. Then we had Mrs. Gloria Nabweteme, who taught us about marketing and branding. So I'm very sure that all of you now know how to brand and market your products out there in the oil and gas sector. Then we had Mrs. Shida Kasemire, who was here to teach us about contract management. You really now understand when it comes to having contracts. How are you supposed to get a contract? What is required of a contract? And then we had Mr. Majezi, who was here trying to tell us about business strategy, giving us hints on how to do business. He was telling us about human resource, training us and telling us what we are required of, governance. So I thank all the consultants that have been here trying to lecture and train all the SMEs out there. I know you guys are out there watching and you've been learning and you've been taking notes, and I hope to hear from you today when you guys are giving testimonies of what you have learned. We really need feedback from you, especially you people who are operating SMEs out there. So just like these other days, today we have someone, a coach, a mentor, a consultant, who will be taking us through a very interesting topic. And as you already know, the way we have been doing it, I just request that share the link. We are also streaming live on Twitter. Follow Vector Energies on Twitter, then you can watch us live here. Then on YouTube, please keep subscribing to the channel so that you share it to very many other people out there, so that they don't miss out on this very wonderful and exciting lecture that we'll be having right here today. So today we have a coach, a trainer, and a consultant called Mrs. Barbara Mwanje. Mrs. Barbara Mwanje is an expert in quite a number of things when it comes to healthy and safety standards. She has expertise in occupational health and safety, and then she has also expertise in road safety, and then HSE audit and management system. What are these really? Many of you out there, just like me, we may not know about road safety. We might also not know about occupational health. But today we have a very great chance that someone will be lecturing us, and we will know by the time I leave here and by the time all of you out there, viewers, leave, wherever you are watching us from, you will know what occupational health is. So I therefore take this chance to welcome Mrs. Barbara Manje on our show, on our training, and the viewers out there, I just request that you keep on the screens so that you watch us and learn. You are welcome, Mrs. Barbara Manje.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that very kind introduction, and for the background of all the trainings that have already happened under the Enterprise Development Program. Viewers, you're most welcome. I'd like to add my voice to welcome you, and hoping that all that you have learned is already being applied in your businesses, and that the businesses are growing. Today, we will be talking about occupational health and safety, and this is a very, very broad topic, and we will be going through different parts of well, sort of an introduction to occupational health and safety. It would be very nice if we have a number of you just typing in and letting us know what sectors, what kind of business you do. As you can imagine, with occupational health and safety, a lot of it there's the basic principles which we'll go through, but a lot of it is also very specific to the industry, the sector, and the areas of work, whether it's geographic locations or the focus of your businesses, and therein different risks occur, different hazards present themselves. But today we will look through an introduction, understanding the basic principles. We will also look at, so the training outcomes will begin with understanding health and safety principles, as well as the legal framework. Michael has discussed governance, he's discussed national content, and a couple of other things that you've already been taken through. Health and safety is a key component of governance today for sustainable business, and then also a very robust legal framework to support that. We will also be looking at development of health and safety policy. Again, this is a management level, and then we'll look at understanding the common risks and hazards at the workplace. To conduct, we'll also look at conduction of workplace risk assessments, and we'll go through a live example of one of these at a workplace location. We will also want to have an outcome in terms of how to put in place risk mitigation strategies at your workplaces. And finally, we will look very briefly at designing occupational health management systems. So this is a lot of governance, it's a lot of management, but it's also very practical in terms of how we manage, assess risk, manage risk, mitigate risk, and control risk. So the first question, of course, is what is health and safety? The term health and safety is generally used to describe occupational health and safety. When we talk about the word occupational health and safety, underline occupational. This is any space, any place where people work, including schools, because schools, yes, they're students, but this is what the students are doing. They're learning at this place that is called a school, and their staff and others. And it relates to the prevention of accidents and ill health. So we're not just talking about physical fitness or physical health issues. We're also talking about general health issues, including mental health. We'll also be looking at health and safety, and this is about preventing. So the cornerstone of health and safety is really prevention, 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 and mitigation. We want to avoid the accidents. We want to see them before they occur. We want to prevent them occurring. And if we can't prevent them completely, we want to manage the level of severity as much as possible so that we completely eliminate fatalities and even the injuries, should they occur, though we would rather they do not, are well managed and they only register as minor incidents. So we're talking about accidents, incidents at the workplace that may result in injury to your employees and also other people that are in your workspace, or even your customers who come into your workplace and the general community around your workplace. So we do not look after our own employees and forget about those that visit our workplaces, our customers, but also it is now best practice to look at the community within which we work and also take care of the community health and safety. Why is health and safety important? Health and safety helps ensure that all employees feel at ease in their workplace. You can imagine a person who goes to work and every day is afraid for their life. I can't imagine that there'll be much productivity from that person who comes into the workplace, is afraid every day for their life, for their safety, for their health. And more than that, health and safety related issues that arise in the workplace are more of a burden to the organization than many of us realize. Many a time, until an establishment or a company is pushed to the very edge because of a death at the workplace, many do not understand that putting these measures, looking at health and safety before the event, the incident, the accident occurs, saves the company a lot of, in terms of image, in terms of loss of productivity, time lost, and others. So where we think it's a burden for the organization to implement these activities that ensure health and safety from the beginning, some of the overarching benefits will actually they'll be much better than if you just wait for the accident to happen. When an accident happens, there's a lot more in terms of costs and other disadvantages than if you had put the health and safety measures in place from the very beginning. Some of these benefits include decreased absences among the employees, increased productivity of work, increased brand image. We don't want a company where you have incidents that even involve the wider community. In Uganda, more recently, we've seen trucks overturning fuel tankers, and these cause a lot of damage to the community, the wider community, and of course also to the image of your business, of your organization. We also want to ensure workers and stakeholders are at ease while at work, which is something I already talked about. We do not want to go to work stressed and fearful every day because of the hazards that are in place in our workplaces. We also have compliance, and again, Michael has talked about compliance, and this is extremely important. Legal compliance is, I cannot stress it enough, and we will go soon into the legal framework, policies and regulations with which every company of every size, as long as you have over 5 employees, you must be compliant with HSS, health safety, legal framework and policies and regulations. So, for example, we've in the past done some audits for some companies and pretty large ones as well, I must tell you, and found that non-compliance was a big issue, not only in health and safety, but also environment. And in that space, this particular company probably is going to need to negotiate fines worth 400 million shillings for non-compliance. So this is, again, I repeat, putting these things in place saves you a lot more than you imagine before, if you do these things before the event, the incident. It's very costly once you're found non-compliant or once an accident happens or an incident happens. Of course, also customers will be happy as that they know that they are buying from a fair company. Health and safety is really promoting diversity in a way, it's promoting equity in a way, it's making sure that everybody in the workplace, whether it's an elderly person in the workplace, or a person living with disability in the workplace, or a lady that is an expectant mother or a new mother, that all of these people are happy at work, and the customers can see this. And these days, the times are past where anyone wants to work with companies, organizations that do not care for their employees, do not care for their community, do not care for their customers. Those days are well gone. We must be working and being seen to work in a sustainable way. And the most important thing in any company is the workforce, your people, your employees. So there is nothing you'll do that is sustainable if you're not able to work with your employees and make sure that they are healthy, their safety, and their happiness at work, job satisfaction are all taken care of. Now, this is how we move into the legal framework. So yes, the sole duty or onus of safety and health of all employees is the employer, the company that is employing. However, because it's a constitutional right, in the Constitution of Uganda 1995, it is a constitutional right to protect citizens, and the government has this duty. Above all others, above the employers, the government of Uganda has a duty to protect its citizens through a dedicated ministry, which is the Ministry of Labor, Gender, and also various laws and regulations. The government directs and governs the actions of employers to ensure a safe and healthy citizenry, which is in the same way that a safe and healthy employees are important to a company, safe and healthy citizens are important to a country's productivity. So we have two areas that I'd like us to look at. We have the labor laws, and then we have the Occupational Health and Safety Act 2006. These can all be found at different sites, especially all of them you can find at on the website of the ministry. And I'll just list them as we go and say a little bit about them. For under labor laws, because all of your employees are, they fall under the labor laws. They are protected under the labor laws, should I say, not fall under. They are protected by the labor laws. So there's the Employment Act of 2006. There's the Workers' Compensation Act of 2000. There's the NSSF Act of 1985. The Labor Disputes Act 2006. The Arbitration and Conciliation Act 2000. The Labor Unions Act 2000. Now, some of these may be applicable depending on the size of your organization and whether the employees are unionized, but ultimately, the general rule is, even for NSSF, is once you have 5 employees, actually for NSSF it has now changed. As long as you're a company and you're registered, NSSF must be paid into for all employees. So the next and even now more nuanced is the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 2006. And it's a big, big document, of course, but I've highlighted a few sections here just for us to really look at some of the things and see how they will apply in the rest of this training session. So we have, for example, Section 13 of the OSH Act, and that is duty of employer to protect employee. This is extremely, extremely important, and it's a cornerstone for all people employing others, that the duty is upon you. It is not upon the employee, it is upon the owner of the company, the management of the company. It is your sole duty to make sure that your employees are healthy and they're safe at all times. When we look at this, I'll just give you an example. In the past maybe week or so, we had a deputy head teacher of a school. It's been trending on social media, I think even in the newspapers. A deputy headmaster of a school was chasing after a child and hurt himself, fell into a manhole and got hurt. And this case actually went to court because he was seeking compensation. So these are some of the things that happen. A person is within their right, an employee is within their right to seek compensation and to take it as far as to the courts of law where necessary. So we need to make sure that we understand this very, very well. And of course, legal teams are always available to support you. I don't know, Michael, if there's going to be also any kind of training for legal.
That has been skipped, but you know, since trainings are ongoing,
yes,
that will have to come in later.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so basically then there's section 14, which is the health and safety policy and statement. The policy is separate from the statement. The statement is almost a promise, a commitment that is in writing, that is made by the very, very top official of an organization. For example, if it's CNOOC, it would be that the president of CNOOC is the one that signs that statement. And that statement is often placed in very visible areas of the workplace, maybe at the reception and maybe a few other areas. But it's what it's saying from the very highest level of management, from the top person of management, that we are committed here at CNOOC to health and safety. And then we have a policy, which is a much bigger document and which we will touch on at a later point in this session. We also have section 15 and 16, which again, these are, many of these, as you see, they are in an act, which means every single one of these clauses is a requirement. It's not, oh, I want one or I don't. You don't get to choose. Otherwise, you're found non-compliant. So section 15 and 16 requires that there are safety representatives and or committees at every organization. The reason for this is often people speak better. They have a better voice when they're with their peers. They are afraid sometimes to come to top management and share their grievances. So a representative is a part of the peer group and is able to witness, to observe, and also to talk more freely with other colleagues, especially when there are grievances, whether they are in terms of fear of injury because maybe personal protective equipment is not adequate or suitable. It could be possibly sexual harassment at work. So it's extremely important that every organization, however small, however big, has representation. We also then have section 19, which is dedicated to adequate and suitable PPE, personal protective equipment, or gear is also used. And these are your helmets, these are your reflective vests, these are your boots, safety boots, and different, there's so many different, your goggles, there's so many different types of protective, personal protective equipment. And again, these are, the reason we use the word adequate and suitable, these always have to be put there before you say PPE. There has to be adequate and suitable. Sometimes we have personal protective gear like helmets that are not, they're neither suitable nor adequate. I think maybe you've seen bodabodas riding with a helmet, and if you look at that helmet very closely, it could be a construction helmet. So that in the event of an accident, there is no way that construction helmet was designed for the force and the impact at the speed at which the boda is traveling. So they has to be adequate and suitable. All PPE falls under standards, and UNBS has a lot of these standards already that you can look at, but it's important that your PPE is standardized, it works for purpose, it's fit for purpose, and it's suitable as well. Section 55 is first aid. The general rule of thumb is 10 people, 1 first aider per 10 staff. But of course, different businesses are, operate in some in low risk business, others are very high risk business. And so this can be addressed further through a risk assessment and task analysis and other such methods to really understand what are the risks, what are the level, what's the likelihood that this will happen, and what is the severity if it should happen. Are we talking about a fatality or a cut on the finger, for example? So all these kind of determine actually everything, but first aid also. So if you have a company with less than 5 staff or 5 staff, there's nothing wrong with having at least one person who has had first aid training. And if you want more first aid trained staff, that's also a good thing, because many times we also have customers coming into the workplace. You might have a small team of staff, but have very high turnover of customers, or you might be in a community that is vulnerable. Maybe a school is close by. There's always a good thing to have enough first aiders on your team. Section 57 and 58 is really dedicated to fire, emergency fire response and equipment. What kind of equipment do you have at your workplace? Different types of fires use different types of extinguishers. And it's important that this is well understood, and what kind of fires are likely, when you look at your risk assessment, your hazards, what kind of fire is likely to start in your workplace. And so what kind of firefighting equipment do you require? And also fire marshals, and this is also how we evacuate. In case of an emergency, your evacuation plan, is it clear to everybody? Have you inducted even visitors at your workplace so that they know in the event of an emergency, this is the process, this is what happens? And you also have your fire marshals in place to help direct your staff, but even more importantly, people that have come into your workplace and do not already know the procedures. And finally, I thought I'll just share with you a section on manual handling, which is really one of the biggest causes of injury at the workplace is manual handling. How we move things about, how we store things, and what kind of hazards are created in that way. So we'll now go into developing a health and safety policy. And this is extremely critical. As I had said earlier, we start with the fact that we need health and safety to get its place at the top highest level of governance of the organization. From the board level into the management of the company, health and safety must be in all of these right from the beginning at the governing on strategic level of the business. So because sometimes there's also costs involved in mitigating, putting in place mitigation and other controls for health and safety, it is important that because of the costs that could be implied, it's important that health and safety is taken as a very, very important area in each workplace. We find many times that the cost of putting the measures in place to keep our staff safe and healthy make management a little bit scared. Oh, we don't have that much money, it's too much money. But the risk is non-compliance, the risk is harm to your staff, and this is why we then need to have the statement from the very top, because it's then a commitment that is visible to all the staff. In fact, many companies have health and safety meetings weekly, depending especially on your area of work. But this is good practice for all businesses. And the policy is now that bigger document, and we'll look through some of the areas that a policy looks into. And basically, it's like when you're talking about your financial policies or manuals, these are to guide the way in which you will manage your financial obligations as a company. Tax compliance, as Michael had mentioned earlier, and other types of things. What kind of money, what are the processes, procurement, all of these things will be taken care of, for example, in your financial manual or policy for the company. In the same way, we've also heard about human resource policies. And these now are very, very tied to health and safety policies. If you look at a human resource policy, almost can fall under the health and safety policy, or they're very, very intertwined, because health and safety is about your human resources mostly. So the human resource policy, again, we all know this. It tells us how to manage our staff, what the terms and conditions, what the benefits that should be availed to staff, whether it's medical insurance and others. So it's important, therefore, to also have a health and safety policy which sets the at what level that they will be financed, that they will be managed, that they will be governed, that they will be monitored and evaluated. So let's just take a look at an overview of the health and safety policy, as well as a few key areas that should be covered when we're writing our policy. The law says that every business must have a policy for managing health and safety. This is a management tool. This is a management tool. A health and safety policy sets out your general approach to health and safety. Your approach means your culture, the attitude that you're building in your workplace. A lot of human beings, we have what is called behavior, different personalities, different ways that we behave. And many times these are also taken into consideration, because we all react differently. We all do things differently. So the ability to implement the policy, and that's where we're starting to talk about the approach. Because if you have a policy, how are you going to implement it? And that's also part of the policy, how you will implement to this broad, diverse workforce you have, customer base that you have. And so this is an important thing. The approach is very, very important. This explains, as an employer, how you manage your health and safety, and it should clearly say who does what, when, and how. There is no good having a work plan, for example, or a strategy, and you have no idea who is doing what, who is in charge of what, because then the implementation becomes difficult, monitoring and evaluation becomes difficult, and worst of all, accountability becomes null and void. It is important that when we know who is in charge of what, and the general implementation of the general policy, but also the areas of focus within the policy. Who is doing what, who is in charge of what, and how will they do it, and when. This is very, very critical. Without this, it's going to be a document, as we hear so many people say, a document that is sitting and gathering dust on somebody's desk. If you have 5 or more employees, you must write your policy down. 5 or more employees, you must write your policy down. If you have fewer than 5, You do not have to write it down, but it's always useful to do so. Even those 5 people are worth are worth being considered, and an approach that is available to ensure their safety and their health at the workplace. The policy needs to be shared to all employees. It's very, very key, because any changes to it especially should also be communicated to employees. Best practice is that the employees themselves, through the representatives that we talked about, for example, are also part of the process of developing these policies. It supports ownership. They feel that this is their policy as well. They feel more excited because they've been involved, and they've been also able to share their experiences. And they're often the ones that will share things that maybe management has not seen, that they have experienced in their day-to-day tasks at the workplace. Now, how to write your policy? We will, as an introduction today, our policy should cover 3 areas. These are key areas. Of course, there's several other areas, but these are the key areas that we want to highlight today. The statement of intent. State your general policy on health and safety at work, including your commitment to managing health and safety and your aims to do so. As the employer or most senior person in the company, you should sign it and review it regularly. So I already talked about this. It is extremely important that everybody knows that the commitment came right from the very, very, very top of the organization and trickles all the way down. So this is very, very important. Responsibilities, number 2 is responsibilities for health and safety. List the names, the positions, and the roles of the people in your business who have specific responsibility for health and safety. You will find that you might have a health and safety department, you might have a legal department, you might have a human resource department, or if not departments, you have staff, you have officials, you have an HR manager or an HR officer, health and safety officer. It is very important that it's very important that these people, these staff members, understand their role, and they have their specific responsibility for health and safety. For example, the legal officer might take care of the compliance issues. Yes, do we have our workplace registration for our employees from the ministry? Do we have the certification from NEMA? Do we have, if you're in the fuel business, do you have your bulk storage permits from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development? So that might be something done by a legal officer, for example. So health and safety can cut across many areas of your workspace. Then human resource, our contracts. Do we cater for, what are the terms and conditions of work? Maternity leave, paternity leave, sick leave, all of these things, medical insurance, provision of personal protective gear. All of these are there in your HR contracts, NSSF, and all of these are extremely important. That will now be seen more with your HR department. And then health and safety, which is the overarching really, is looking at the tasks that your employees undertake. Are they safe? What needs to be done to make them safer? What needs to be done? Can we eliminate the hazard completely? If not, how do we reduce the level of risk, the likelihood? How do we reduce the severity, and so on and so forth? So this area of responsibility is extremely important. As I said earlier, if we don't know who is responsible, who do you go to when it's time that something has happened or when something new has to be done? There is a lack of accountability when we have those gaps in who is taking care of what. Part 3 is the arrangements for health and safety. Here we give details of the practical arrangements you have in place, showing how they will be achieved, how your health and safety policy will be implemented. And this could include, for example, doing a risk assessment, understanding, first of all, you find out what are the hazards in this workplace or in this business. When we talk about workplace also, let's not forget that we're not just talking about the work that takes care, or that takes place at the office or in the factory, but even a staff member moving product, doing deliveries on the road is still at work. That also counts as a workplace. The person is still at work, so anything that happens to that person and they're on the road doing your work falls under the organization. It is your duty to make sure that that person does their work in a safe and healthy environment, including our roads and the vehicles that are being used, and so on and so on. We also have a key area in terms of training employees. There are so many different types of trainings, whether it's firefighting, first aid, emergency response. There's so many different types of trainings, working at height, working with fire, and working in confined spaces. There are very many types of trainings, and these are very critical. Even how to use proper personal protective gear. In the event that you're a fire marshal, what kind of gear have you provided for your employees? And do they know when to use it and how to use it? And then we also have a lot of signs, safety signs. Some are warnings, some are directions, some are information. So again, all of these should be in the policy, as well as the kind of equipment that is required for different tasks that are done under your daily operations as a business, whether it's machinery or hazardous substances and other such things that are used at the workplace. So we're going to look at some of the health and safety risks, and most common in the workplace include slips, trips, and falls. Again, I'd like, as I'd said at the very beginning, if you could just, some of you, where possible, just drop us a message on the area of work, the kind of business you're doing, because it will be interesting to see what kind of businesses are here on this platform today, because then we can really look at the different types of hazards that each business, a school will have different hazards from a petroleum company, a leather tanning company will have different hazards from a telecom company, a catering company will have different hazards from an agro business, and so on and so forth. So it's quite varied, but the principles, I repeat, remain the same. So these are the most common is slips, trips, and falls. These cause workplace injuries such as broken bones and fractures, sprains, and sometimes even death if, for example, somebody slips on a staircase and falls. And these types of accidents can be caused by a range of hazards. And some of these are wet surfaces. You see the picture of that stair, and it's the boot is firm, but the staircase looks quite, it could just fall apart anytime. But if it was wet and more smooth, we would have a problem of a slippery surface, a wet surface. And even floors is a big thing, especially we've noticed here in Kampala. A lot of buildings do not have even floors, and even more, we don't have very many. Our staircases, sometimes our stairways are uneven. So of course, poor lighting is self-explanatory. If you can't see where you're passing, it's very difficult to avoid or even see where the risk or the hazard is. Cluttered areas, when you have a space that is so small and there's so many things, so it's easy to trip over things. In general, we call this housekeeping, keeping things separated and well stored so that everything is outside, away from walkways, away from especially emergency exits and other such things. Cables and wires are well placed and well put aside, and all of these fall under the cluttered areas that present hazards. We also would like to talk about inadequate safety equipment. This is having your employees working with electricals, and they do not have the correct kind of gloves. There are different types of gloves. People working with waste, and they don't have the right gloves, whether it's biological waste or chemical waste or hazardous substances, and they do not have the right gloves. They have gloves, but they're not the right gloves. The chemical can seep through, for example, if the gloves are not correct. And then we also have road safety. I think in Uganda, this is a very, very key area. You'll find that in many, many companies, road safety is identified very quickly as one of the top hazards or risks. And this includes your vehicles. It also includes employees who are traveling on border, for example, courier services, running above with their errands, and they don't wear helmets. I repeat, it is upon the employer to make sure that all of your staff that are using motorcycles to do any aspect of work need to have a helmet, adequate helmet that is standardized. We also have ergonomic injuries. These are injuries that are really a result of physical limitations, our physical body, posture, repetitive tasks, and other such hazards. And these cause pain, discomfort, and physical limitations. These injuries are usually caused by performing tasks in awkward positions or with incorrect posture. For example, a poorly designed workstation are often the cause of these injuries. And these injuries include carpal tunnel syndrome, neck and back pain, as you can see clearly in the picture, tendonitis, rotator cuff injuries, trigger finger. Trigger finger is when you've been doing something so repetitively and one of your fingers gets stuck in position for a little bit of time. And then we have this back pain that we suffer, especially for those who work on a computer all day and you're crouching over. The posture is bad and it's going on the whole day. So with time, all sorts of aches and pains begin, and also they start to become more severe and limit your physical abilities. So we need to take more, again, this is task analysis based. We need to look at each task and see what the issues are. Are we overstretching? If someone is on a ladder and the ladder goes only so far and they have to stretch a little bit beyond where the ladder is, that is overstretching. So it can cause physical discomfort, especially if it's repetitive. It can also, of course, lead to a fall off the ladder and so on and so forth. So again, these are the best way to look at this is when you're looking at your task analysis and you really see where the repetitive motions are and see how to improve the way that work is done or the workstation or the safe work methods. So there's this whole term called safe work methods. For example, if you're lifting things from the ground, how do you do that without injuring yourself? Is it better to put them higher up? So all of these things come into play as we continue to talk about. You either eliminate where possible the entire risk hazard is eliminated, or you find a way to reduce the hazard or the risk, the risk in this case, by maybe through engineering measures or administrative measures or even personal protective gear. So in this case, I just repeat one more time, a task analysis is important to understand where the issues might occur with your staff. This is a big one, mental health and stress. This is a big one and had been largely not addressed adequately. In fact, adequately might be an understatement. But mental health and stress really started to show its head in the last maybe 10 years or so. And of course, with COVID, everything just got worse. But mental health and stress are increasingly common in the workplace, and it is a hazard. Many times they can present before entering the workplace. A person might have mental health issues before they even come into work. And of course, now the stress that is at work can have a more direct cause and lead to a more severe mental health situation for this staff member. So mental health is no longer seen in the way that we used to see it, as a stigma, as something that doesn't happen, that is self-brought on. It is a direct result of several factors, and one of them is stress. And so a highly stressful environment or even a highly lonely environment can lead to stress. And so we need to understand better and better what the stress issues are for our staff and how we can look at them and mitigate these stress factors. And some of these include feeling overwhelmed by the workload. Sometimes, especially with my own background is from the non-government organization sector, the civil society sector. And often because these kinds of organizations are really dependent on funds, there's always this drive to make sure that the staff are as minimal as possible to manage administrative costs. And this often leads to overload, work overload. So with small businesses, I know that this can also be an issue, maintaining overheads and all that. But we need to make sure that our staff are not overworked. They are not overwhelmed with what they have. Now, we can be overwhelmed because we don't have the right training to do the work. We can be so we have the capacity, but we haven't been trained. We're willing, but we haven't been trained. We can also be overworked because the hours are too long. We can be overworked because of the two. And we also have discrimination or harassment. I've touched on that a little bit, that even as you see, we're talking about a person that comes to the workplace but maybe already has an existing mental health issue, maybe depression or something like that. And that these things, in the case of such a staff member, that these are all taken into consideration, especially looking at the tasks that they're able to do. I mentioned, for example, expectant mothers. There's a time that if they were working at height, they will not be able to work at height at that point. So you need to be able to rearrange tasks to make sure that people are working in a way that does not cause them stress and fear as they're working. And they should not be discriminated or harassed. A toxic work environment, this is just an environment where there's little connectivity, there's no harmony between staff and management, for example, and these again are toxic work environment. I mean, even a toxic home environment stresses us completely. So there's no reason we should imagine that a toxic work environment is any less possible or difficult for our mental health. So prolonged exposure to stress, whether at work or in other aspects of life, can lead to depression, can lead to anxiety and other mental health issues. And this is where we need these representatives that I spoke about earlier, peers who can understand someone is going through something and who they can open up to easily. Employees can open up to their peer. HR departments that are able to reach out. But also, we also have what is called reviewing medical history. For example, if we provide medical insurance, do we know what the we can get an idea what's going on. If we have so many days absence, leave, if we have people going to the hospital with back pain, if we have incidents. So our reporting, our ability to report health issues, to report incidents, and even near misses help us understand better where are the hazards. And health and safety is a continuous, ongoing improvement program. There's never a time that any company, as big as it can be or as small, will say that we're done with our work. We're done. We're all good now. We have no fear. We have no hazard. That will never happen. And so this is why we also keep looking, reviewing documentation, repeating risk assessments, whether there's a change, maybe you've moved into a new building or you have new staff that have come in. You always do these risk assessments to see what else can we do? What is the new problem that we might be facing now after this change or this event, and so on and so forth. So let's continue to highlight mental health and stress because they're pretty new when we're talking about the workplace, and that a lot of it is now coming out of the workplace. And so I'd like very much that we keep this top of mind because it is growing in terms of the numbers of people at work that are undergoing a lot of stress and in resulting in depression and anxiety and other mental health issues. So I touched a little bit on manual handling and the injuries that come out of manual handling. Manual handling is anything you have to carry, lift, move, and how that is done. Of course, there's now a lot of engineering and equipment to support this, especially with lifting and moving heavy loads. But in some cases, employers are not yet able or willing even to provide equipment that can support their staff. As I said earlier, this could be due to the financial implications of buying such equipment and that's understandable, but it has to also be looked at in a risk assessment where you also look at the cost versus the risk. And if it's high risk, if it leads to fatality, unless you find another way to mitigate or control the hazard or the risk, it's really not a place that leaves room for negotiation, because the life and health of your employees comes first. So manual handling injuries occur when employees lift heavy objects without proper lifting techniques or equipment. So the lifting techniques, again, this is something that can be trained through a physical training program, and really employees are taught how to lift a weight or object, how to move it, and how to place it down again, in order to make sure that we don't have sprains and strains, we don't have hernias, we don't have soft tissue injuries, chronic pain, different limbs, back injuries, which is quite common now, especially when people are lifting heavy objects. And according to the health and safety executive, there should be a manual handling accounts for a third of workplace injuries. So the manuals are important. The safe systems of work are important. There's also something called permit to work, especially for the more risky tasks, such as working at height. There's permit to work, so that the person, before they go to the workplace, they begin the task, they have been trained thoroughly on how to perform this task in the safest possible way, and the methods are actually properly spelled out. You do this, following that you do this, following that you do this, all through the task. Working in confined spaces also has a work to permit. And so it's important that these elements are put together, as well as training, information, and equipment can also be things like ladders. If we're carrying things from a lower level to a higher level, put on a shelf. There are different types of equipment now to move people to higher levels, but sometimes we're using regular ladders. What kind of ladder, for example, are we using? Is it a 3-point ladder? Therefore, the most stable. There are different ways to reach higher places. But again, these are important through training, through task analysis, understanding each task, what is required, where the possible risks are during that task being done. This is a big one, fire and explosions. I don't know if any of our SMEs have in attendance today are in businesses where fire is a real hazard and a real risk as well. And this can present in almost every working environment. Really, they are quite common, and because fire can be caused in so many different ways. While they are more prevalent in specific environments, they are still a risk in offices, in storage facilities, where the risk may seem lower, but they still happen. They still happen. We know our schools, we've had several fires in our schools in Uganda. We've had explosions of tankers on roads, and the causes of these fires are often overloaded circuits, a candle that has been left, and so on and so forth. So let's just look at a list of the most common causes, and these include electrical problems, such as an overloaded circuit or damaged wiring. This is very, very common, damaged wiring. Heating equipment such as furnaces, boilers, kettles, gas cookers especially. I think sigiris can malfunction, or it's an open flame, and you don't know what else is around there, and cause fires if not correctly maintained or used. Smoking is a leading cause of fires in the workplace. It is crucial to follow designated smoking areas and to extinguish cigarettes properly. In Uganda, mostly we are a I don't think we are allowed to, the law does not allow Ugandans to smoke in public spaces, and a workplace is a public space. So I don't know if in Uganda a designated smoking area applies, but especially in a workplace, but that remains to be looked into. But yes, so cigarette smoking is a huge problem, and so it's important that there is a designated smoking area, and that those that are smoking understand the risk, and that cigarettes must be extinguished. Possibly there is areas for extinguishing the cigarettes, and a proper environment also for smoke. Spills or leaks of inflammable or combustible chemicals can ignite and cause fires. And this is, I think, self-explanatory. So again, how do we mitigate this? How do we make sure that these inflammable or combustible chemicals, hazardous substances are kept and stored properly and used only by trained people, and that all the data sheets are looked at properly to understand what the risks are, what the hazards are with these chemicals, and the best way to manage and control the risk that might be, exposure of risk to your employees or your visitors at the workplace, your customers, and your community. When we're talking about spills and leaks, remember earlier we talked about housekeeping, and it is important. We've been to places where you have a jerry can of fuel, and then another one with the diesel, and then another one with another chemical, and they're all stored in a small store, and none of them are labeled. All hazardous substances must be labeled properly with all the relevant signs to show hazard, to show warning, to show caution, to show information. This is very, very, very important. And because you never know who will come into that store. So the stores must be well kept, clear, and even put things separate. You don't want some chemicals stored right next to another chemical. You want to make sure that different chemicals are kept separately. So this is also key in housekeeping, is key in preventing fires and explosions. So businesses are legally required to implement fire prevention measures and procedures to reduce the risk of fires in the workplace. Now, remember when we were looking at the sections of the OSH Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, there was a section, a clause dedicated to fires. And there is a requirement for a fire safety certificate that is issued by the Uganda Police Fire Department for all workplaces. And this is a requirement. So these are the many areas where one might find themselves non-compliant. As we look at the different hazards and issues that get in the way of our ability to keep employees healthy and safe. So we also have electrical hazards. So there are different types of hazards, just to say, and I'm listing many of them as we go, and they're often categorized, and you'll see this as I proceed. We're now looking at electrical hazards. These are common in many workplaces due to the number of electrical devices used in all modern workplaces. These hazards can range from minor shocks to fatal electrocutions if left unaddressed properly by employers. We have many times that you find that a socket has nothing is plugged in, but it's switched on. There are so many times that we find this kind of situation when we do audits or risk assessments at different workplaces. So some of these include electrocution occurs when an individual comes into contact with an electrical current and is killed or severely injured. Shocks occurring when an individual comes into contact with an electrical current and is temporarily incapacitated. Electrical burns occur when an individual comes into contact with an electrical current and suffers burns. Arc flashes are electrical explosions that can cause severe burns and other injuries, and electrical malfunctions or issues can lead to fires, which can cause injury or death. So apart from electrocution, electrical hazards also pose a fire risk as well. I think we can take a break and maybe have some questions and answers.
I'd like to thank you for this wonderful lecture. I know our viewers out there are really enjoying and learning quite a number of things when it comes to occupational health, when it comes to this topic, because I think a lot have been highlighted in that sector around health. We've heard about mental health. We've heard about quite a number of issues. So for now, I see some people here asking me some questions, like someone here, Juma, what strategies can we implement, improve our emergency response plan, make sure all employees are well prepared? That question and the question, should I ask, like, do you answer them? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. There is that one. And then another question from Brenda here. How can we best identify potential health and safety risks within our then the third question is here. How can we create a more proactive culture around health and safety rather than just focusing on compliance?
Can you repeat that one?
How can we create a more proactive culture around health and safety rather than just focusing on compliance? I think you can answer those ones, then others. You can respond to those ones.
Okay, so I'll start with Juma, who asked about strategies towards an evacuation plan. And really, the strategies here will really look at, you'll be looking at the building, the way we enter the building, so it's called access and egress, how you enter the building, how you leave the building, looking at which could be the fire escapes or emergency escapes, and you'll be looking. So it really starts with your evacuation plan, starts with a mapping of the workplace. So you understand where the buildings are, where, for example, the cars are being parked, if you have a parking area, and also identifying a space which allows for people to gather, which is called an evacuation area, where people come together, and from there they are now informed what to do, because you don't want people just running out of the building from all directions. They might run straight into a risk, straight into a hazard that has, for example, there could be a fire outside, part of the building, and they don't know that, and they're running and they're running straight into that fire or the smoke that is coming as a result of that fire. So for your evacuation plan, you want to first do a good look at your building, your entries, your exits, the surrounding areas to the building, and then you lay that out. And then, of course, you have to do a lot of training, identify your first aiders, identify your fire marshals. Those are the people that will receive a higher training than the rest of the staff members. And their duty is to remember the method, the process, the procedures that have been put in place for in the event of an emergency. They know exactly what needs to be done, but the staff generally should also be trained. And then I repeat, the fire marshal, first aiders receive a higher level of training because they will be now in charge of moving people to the designated area for people to meet. And then from there, it is decided the safest way out of the building. So in short, in summary, you're looking at your floor plan, the building, your exits, your entries, the surrounding areas, and the quickest way out of not just the building now, but also the compound. You're also looking at your field marshals, you're looking at your first aiders, you're looking at your emergency contacts, and usually these are displayed. Evacuation plans must be displayed at the entry of the workplace, outside and inside. There's no point having it inside only and you don't have it outside, or vice versa, because you don't know where the hazard will be. So you need to have it inside and also outside. And this plan should also, you need to have the relevant equipment again, and this should be highlighted in that floor plan. Where are the fire extinguishers, both inside and outside? Because if the fire is inside and the extinguishers are only outside, or the fire is outside and the extinguishers, you know, where maybe you're keeping some, you're storing some fuel, bulk fuel, and the extinguishers, the firefighting equipment is on the other side and the hose can't even reach. So all these things, so that is why in the floor map you have to clearly show this is where the fire extinguishers are, this is the designated area where everybody is brought together, there's a field marshal, this is the name on this floor, on this floor, on this floor. Again, like the first aiders, you want a ratio of 1 to 10 field marshals, fire marshals within a workplace. So yes, I think that's it. So you have your training at 2 levels. You've got your floor plan with showing clearly the hazards. You've got, yes, I was talking about emergency contacts. You've got the names and numbers of management of the organization, outside and inside. So the health and safety officer or manager, you've got that. You also have the health and the top management, the managing director, the number. Then you must have Uganda Police Force number. You must have, where possible, the closest hospital. So these are your external partners, your external stakeholders. These are the people you call. You can only manage so much as an organization. If things go beyond your control, immediately you need a fire brigade to come in. You need an ambulance if necessary. So all of these emergency contacts is what they're called, should be well visible to everybody inside the building and outside the building. In general, that is what I would say, Juma, in terms of developing your evacuation plan.
Thank you for that response. Very many people are still sending in their questions, but these questions will be answered in our next session. I thank you for being here. I continue requesting you to share that link, continue sharing the link so that very many other people can join us here, so that they also learn. The way you are learning, very many other people out there really want to make use of this training to also learn about healthy and safety. So let's go for a short break. We will be back in the next few.
The Kingfisher oil fields development has evolved, reaching some significant milestones after CNOOC Uganda Limited and its joint venture partners signed the final investment decision. Land for the construction of different facilities was acquired and compensation was fully made. Cash and in-kind compensation, like resettlement houses for all families, were built and handed over to the project-affected persons. Construction commenced for different aspects of the project, leading to the development of facilities such as the camps, well pads, the central processing facility, and feeder lines, followed by the delivery of the rigs and installation. Spudding was done in January 2023. There have been promising drilling outcomes, with 7 wells drilled in pads 2 and 3. Drilling operations, coring and on-site works are continuing, achieving total footage of approximately 23,000 meters. Other noticeable activities include a base station and permanent camp, solar turbine transportation, EPC 3-tank erection work, and EPC 4 pipeline trenching. CNOOC will actively promote the LPG integration plan, which CNOOC has continued to contribute to the Belt and Road, people-to-people exchanges, enhancing China-Africa friendship and promoting the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. CNOOC collaborates with various Ugandan universities to enhance graduate employment curriculum design and research. We have signed agreements with several institutions to support scientific research and develop talents in the oil and gas sector. CNOOC, in collaboration with 5 other Chinese companies on the Kingfisher project, spearheaded a drive that led to the donation of $500,000 to upgrade the infrastructure of the Entebbe Welfare School. This is the largest donation to education in Uganda.
On behalf of the Ministry of Education and Sport, I would like to extend my gratitude to CNOOC Uganda Limited and the contractors of Kingfisher oil fields for your commitment to the cause of vulnerable and challenged children.
CNOOC sponsors international scholarships, sending Ugandan students to study in China. Under this program, a total of 11 students have been sponsored and 8 have since graduated and are currently working in the oil and gas industry.
This scholarship to me is a dream come true. I always wanted to receive a first-class education from a good school, and CNOOC has provided me with this opportunity, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
CNOOC focuses on training and certification programs for skills needed in the oil and gas industry, which promotes local employment and strengthens Uganda's logistics and industrial capacity. Over 150 contractors and more than 3,000 individuals have been trained in various oil and gas skills. The company collaborates with local vocational schools to provide welder training, significantly contributing to Uganda's professional welding sector.
They took the initiative to sponsor us who are underdogs, and they want to put us somewhere. We thank them a lot. There's nothing much we can give them, but maybe use the skills properly so that they can also feel they have done some impact in the Uganda we have now.
CNOOC Youth Employment Support Program has trained over 350 local youths in various vocational skills, improving their employability and living conditions. These trainings cover welding, heavy truck driving, heavy machinery operation, engineering construction, and other skills needed in the oil and gas field development, as well as driving, tailoring, and hairdressing, among others. CNOOC invests in projects to improve community living standards, such as providing clean drinking water to over 13,000 residents in Buhuka flats, carrying out medical camps and building resettlement houses with modern amenities for 56 households. We have also invested $620,000 in maintaining critical roads and enhancing public safety. Livelihood restoration programs include donating livestock and teaching scientific breeding methods. We also work closely with the Confucius Institute of Makerere University, supporting events like the Chinese Bridge Competition and the Sound in My Heart Chinese Song Competition. CNOOC also organizes activities to celebrate Chinese culture, such as the Spring Festival. These efforts enrich cultural communication and foster mutual understanding between China and Uganda.
CNOOC Uganda Limited is committed to education and capacity building to fulfill its vision of energy for Uganda.
The Kingfisher oil fields development has evolved, reaching some significant milestones after CNOOC Uganda Limited and its joint venture partners signed the final investment decision. Land for the construction of different facilities was acquired and compensation was fully made. Cash and in-kind compensation, like resettlement houses for all families, were built and handed over to the project-affected persons. Construction commenced for different aspects of the project, leading to the development of facilities such as the camps, well pads, the central processing facility, and feeder lines, followed by the delivery of the rigs and installation. Spudding was done in January 2023. There have been promising drilling outcomes, with 7 wells drilled in pads 2 and 3. Drilling operations, coring and on-site works are continuing, achieving total footage of approximately 23,000 meters. Other noticeable activities include a base station and permanent camp, solar turbine transportation, EPC 3-tank erection work, and EPC 4 pipeline trenching. CNOOC will actively promote the LPG integration plan, which will gradually achieve the strategic transformation towards a green and low-carbon energy supplier. A camp integrated hydropower project has been set up, which will result in carbon dioxide emission reduction by 3,156 tons. CNOOC has continued to contribute to the Belt and Road, people-to-people exchanges, enhancing China-Africa friendship and promoting the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. CNOOC collaborates with various Ugandan universities to enhance graduate employment curriculum design and research. We have signed agreements with several institutions to support scientific research and develop talents in the oil and gas sector. CNOOC, in collaboration with 5 other Chinese companies on the Kingfisher project, spearheaded a drive that led to the donation of $500,000 to upgrade the infrastructure of the Entebbe Welfare School. This is the largest donation to education in Uganda.
On behalf of the Ministry of Education and Sport, I would like to extend my gratitude to CNOOC Uganda Limited and the contractors of Kingfisher oil fields for your commitment to the cause of vulnerable and challenged children.
CNOOC sponsors international scholarships, sending Ugandan students to study in China. Under this program, a total of 11 students have been sponsored and 8 have since graduated and are currently working in the oil and gas industry.
This scholarship to me is a dream come true. I always wanted to receive a first-class education from a good school, and CNOOC has provided me with this opportunity, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
CNOOC focuses on training and certification programs for skills needed in the oil and gas industry, which promotes local employment and strengthens Uganda's logistics and industrial capacity. Over 150 contractors and more than 3,000 individuals have been trained in various oil and gas skills. The company collaborates with local vocational schools to provide welder training, significantly contributing to Uganda's professional welding sector.
They took the initiative to sponsor us who are underdogs, and they want to put us somewhere. We thank them a lot. There's nothing much you can give them, but maybe use the skills properly so that they can also feel they have done some impact in the Uganda we have now.
CNOOC Youth Employment Support Program has trained over 350 local youths in various vocational skills, improving their employability and living conditions. These trainings cover welding, heavy truck driving, heavy machinery operation, engineering construction, and other skills needed in the oil and gas field development, as well as driving, tailoring, and hairdressing, among others. CNOOC invests in projects to improve community living standards, such as providing clean drinking water to over 13,000 residents in Buhuka flats, carrying out medical camps and building resettlement houses with modern amenities for 56 households. We have also invested $620,000 in maintaining critical roads and enhancing public safety. Livelihood restoration programs include donating livestock and teaching scientific breeding methods. We also work closely with the Confucius Institute of Makerere University, supporting events like the Chinese Bridge Competition and the Sound in My Heart Chinese Song Competition. CNOOC also organizes activities to celebrate Chinese culture, such as the Spring Festival. These efforts enrich cultural communication and foster mutual understanding between China and Uganda.
CNOOC Uganda Limited is committed to education and capacity building to fulfill its
I hope during the short break you saw some of the works that are being done by CNOOC Uganda. There is a lot that is happening out there in Chukube, a lot is being done as we all prepare and wait for the first oil. A lot of activities are happening. Very many people have been employed, and Ugandans are very happy because we have CNOOC. And again, Ugandans and those that are having SMEs in the oil and gas sector are very happy that we have this online session, online training, where CNOOC made sure that all these SMEs just come, go view and learn something. So today we are still continuing with our expert here, who is really teaching us about safety and health. And there is a lot when it comes to safety and health. And before we went for our short break, there were a few questions still, but I see here, I thank all our viewers that are watching us from wherever you are, especially those having SMEs. I see many of you here really following the sessions, and I'll read a few of some comments here from the online viewers. Shira Kasemili. Shira Kasemili is having a question here. Tell us more about workman compensation. What kind of injuries qualify for compensation? How can someone apply and get compensated? What kind of compensation is available and for how long? That is a question from Sheila Kasemili. Stephen Odokorachi. I wish every workplace has firefighting equipment since it's the most common hazard at the workplace. Oh, thank you, Stephen, for being here from the day we started up today. Mwonge Kasim, this is a very important topic. We should emphasize fire safety training in all workplaces. Stephen Yodokorachi again here says, how can I keep myself safe from wild animals in case I am working within the park? So Stephen doesn't know how to keep himself safe. So he really wants to know how can he be safe from wild animals when he's working in a park. Then we have Wanyana Lydia. How do I hold my workplace accountable to workplace health and safety? That is Wanyana Lydia. And very many other questions are still coming in, but I hope you will first respond to these ones, then we will continue. I'm sure we have another topic. After answering these questions, we will start off with the other topic.
I think I'll answer some of them, because some of them will actually be part of what's coming.
Okay, thank you.
So I might answer two for now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had answered the first question from Juma regarding evacuation plans. There was also another question from Brenda about identifying hazards and risks, and I will touch on that as we enter the second session of this training. So I think you can wait to hear more on risk assessment, which is the next part of this training. We also had a number of questions, a series of questions on work compensation. Because of the time, I would ask that you go to the Ministry of Gender and Labor, and the Compensation Act is there. Please have a look at it. It will answer all your questions. It's quite a wide document, and the questions are quite a number, but therein you shall find the answers to all your questions. Thank you for that question. It's very important that employers know what exactly they're getting into when they get their staff in place. And there's also on accountability. There's also a question on culture. Culture and accountability. So you're talking about having a culture in place instead of doing it just for compliance. You'll notice when we started the training, I started with the policy, I started with the management, with the benefits of having health and safety measures and how holding them very, very important. And I only came into the legal framework after that was deliberate, because ideally we don't want to do things just because a government, ministry, department, or agency is going to come and fine us, and our image will be spoiled. Those are not the reasons that we look after our staff. Our staff is our workforce. So when we're talking about accountability and culture, culture is the first thing. So constant trainings. We've had, many of us maybe have heard of toolbox meetings, where once a week, some depending on the level of your business, the risks in your business, some have it every day. And in some companies that I've worked with before, they actually they always have the managing director in these meetings. That is a way she often does not even really engage very much, but their presence alone shows all the other staff. We lead by example, shows all the other staff that this is important enough for Mr. or Mrs. Ms. so and so to leave their very, very crazy schedule and sit with us every morning for 30 minutes to talk about health and safety. That is again why I talked about the statement. The statement must be visible to all staff and all visitors, and it should be signed by the highest office of the organization, the highest person in the organization. These are all ways that we foster a culture of health and safety. Another way, as we talk about accountability, I'm trying to answer these two questions together because they actually complement each other. When you're looking at, if you do constant training, it's very good for all the staff so that they're trained. And as we train, we also have behavior change. As we inform, awareness, all of these are the ways that we create behavior change. Behavior change comes from information, awareness, and information includes knowledge. So information, knowledge, awareness, and sometimes enforcement. So this is now when we come to accountability. Other ways that we can ensure culture is develop a sense of pride through reporting. If, for example, many companies now, again trying to show that health and safety is key, will have a board outside the office or inside at the main entrance showing the number of incidences in that month or in that year, the number of fatal, the number of minor, and the whole office takes a lot of pride in showing off 0 incidences, 0 fatalities for a year, for 2 years, for 10 years. This should be something of pride. So then we're talking about enforcement. Unfortunately, because we are humans, we err. Sometimes we just want to take a shortcut because that's how we are. So again, there you want to have those representatives. You want to have health and safety officers that are not bogged down with a lot of other work. We find that health and safety officers now are also doing a million other things. So it's very hard for them to keep watching, supervising. Supervision is key. Who is supervising risky work? Who is there to make sure that the methods that have been developed to make sure that the work is done with as little risk as possible, or no risk if possible? Who is supervising? And then it is also a good practice to include health and safety in performance reviews. This is something else that is done, and this is to the lady who has asked about accountability. And remember, I talked about responsibility. Who is responsible? Now, the top person in the organization holds the maximum responsibilities, but then we start to delegate downwards. So who does what and why, and when and how? So, for example, if you have staff at management level, maybe you have 3 managers. It should be included when you do your performance reviews that are usually done annually. You review performance from all your staff. You also hear back, because it's a participatory best practices, that it's a two-way street. It's not the manager or the supervisor telling this person, this is what you did, this is what you did well here, you did badly here, but that the person, the staff member, can also give feedback and also let you know where they needed support and so on. So if there is always a section on health and safety within the job performance reviews, the forms you use, that is an excellent way to make sure that everyone knows that this is for all of us, that we all have, because you see, also our behavior is important. We can only be supervised so far. There's a point where supervision is not possible anymore. Because of my road safety area of expertise, I'd like to give you an example of, again, border riders who wear a helmet because they know that there's a police officer ahead. And then as soon as they pass, they remove the helmet. But in the event of an accident, the officer will not be there. Yes, they'll be called to gather your remains and put them on a truck for burial. So there's only so much supervision. So if this becomes part and parcel of job reviews, trainings, and a sense of pride, maybe some kind of event to recognize health and safety performance annually. These things all help to build that culture, so that it's not about compliance, it's about keeping each other safe. And we must also not forget to remember the support staff. Sometimes we think of just the people who are in the, doing some of the work, but we forget the support staff, the people that help us keep the offices clean. It's important. If you're building a culture, it has to come from the top to the bottom, not bottom top. It starts for health and safety. It starts top to bottom. I hope with that I've put two questions together, and I think.
Before we go for the next topic, there is Hilda here asking, which courses can organizations take to have health and safety certifications? How long do these courses take? And where and how, which institutions in Uganda have tailored these courses?
So there are a number of courses, usually certified courses. There's NEBOSH, there's COSH, there's a number of them. And some are British, some are American, some are Canadian, and they're all accredited. So usually you find they are available online. You can do an online, and usually there's also a practical section of the course. You do the online course, and then you have examinations. There is different levels. There's a certificate level, there's a diploma level. The diploma is equivalent to a first degree, and then from there you can actually do, it's level 6, so it's equivalent to a first degree, and then from there you can do masters. So basically there are several online, but also there are some in Uganda that now provide training at certificate level, and certificate level is quite good, at least as a start, and as a bare minimum, really. So what we will do is we'll see our way later to share some information, maybe links or websites to some of these providers for certification in occupational health and safety.
Okay, thank you. Now I think we are ready for the next topic. Our viewers, we are going in for the next topic. Watch and listen carefully, because this is very important.
Okay, so I think it was Brenda who was asking about health and safety hazards and risks assessments, and this is what we are going into now. As the next session of this training. So, what is a health and safety hazard? A hazard is something that has the potential to cause harm or damage, or to have an adverse effect on a person or people. Many people confuse the words hazard and risk, especially in relation to occupational health and safety. So I'd like to just let you know that the difference between hazard is something that has potential to cause harm. It has potential to cause harm, and I'll share some examples as we go. A risk really talks about the likelihood that that potential, that hazard will actually cause harm. So the hazard is the potential, something that's there. It's right there, and it can cause harm. For example, again, I'll give you an example of road safety. The vehicles are there, the traffic is there, the pedestrians, the cars, the borders, the cyclists, they're all there. That's the hazard. Now, I'm a pedestrian and I'm walking. These are all hazards around me. The border is a hazard, the matatu is a hazard, or the taxi, the bus is a hazard, all the vehicles. And now the risk is, what is the risk to me around these hazards? What is the likelihood that this vehicle will have a maneuver to dodge something, avoid an accident, and hit me instead? So the risk is the likelihood of harm due to the exposure to the hazard. I hope that's making some sense, yeah? So the hazard is the thing that's there that can cause you harm. The risk is what's the likelihood that this harm will actually occur, and to what degree. They call it risk exposure. What's my exposure as well to the hazard, the risk? And when we're looking at assessment and mitigation, we're also looking at how do we mitigate? How do we control the risk? How do we lessen? The hazard is there, but how do we lessen the risk? Is it by removing the hazard completely? If it's possible, that's the best case scenario. But if it's not, what else can we do to either limit the exposure of risk, or the likelihood, or the severity in case in case an incident occurs? So the common workplace hazards are mostly categorized in several categories, and so we'll go through those categories. We have what is called biological hazards. Biological hazards, often referred to as biohazards, can be any biological or organic substances that have the potential to cause harm or pose a threat to a person's health. Now, you'll usually find biological hazards are at their most high in environments like hospitals. Environments like hospitals, there's a lot of biological hazards. So an individual can be exposed to a biological hazard by having contact with any of the following: blood and other bodily fluids, medical waste, fungi, molds and yeasts, bacteria and viruses, animal and bird droppings, environmental specimens such as plants or soil, biological toxins and venoms, insect bites, rubbish, wastewater, and sewage. These all are biological biohazards. So when you're looking at your business, all of you, you're looking at your business, you need to start looking, using the lists that are provided here. Where in your business do we have any biological hazards, if at all? Maybe you don't have any, but if you do, how many are there? And then we start to look at the risk later, and then we start to see how to mitigate, how to control that risk. The next category is chemical hazards. So these are hazards that can be in the form of a solid, liquid, or gas. Some chemicals are more hazardous than others, and they can result in a huge variety of health and physical effects, including skin irritation, breathing problems, respiratory system irritation, and blindness. So chemical hazards are also extremely common, but as I said before, it would be interesting also to know which kinds of industries you're all working in, because you all have different levels of hazards between these categories, depending on the kind of business that you're in. So chemical hazards may be present in the following products. For example, cleaning products. We all clean, but we all use cleaning products, but to different degrees and types. Paints and solvents. This is very important. And when we're talking about paints, this is also something to look at, the kind of paint you're using, not just for skin irritation, breathing problems, and those that type of effect, but also fire sometimes. So you have paints and solvents, we have pesticides, we have glues, we have gases such as acetylene, propane, carbon monoxide, and helium. We have vapors and fumes. We have flammable materials, highly flammable materials. We have heavy metals such as aluminium, mercury, and lead. We all think, I think we know just how poisonous these are to the human body over a period of time. We have petroleum products, and yes, petroleum products are highly, highly hazardous. And then we have hair dyes and other hair products. And for us ladies, also a lot of cosmetics sometimes present, that we're using present a hazard. Physical hazards cannot always be seen or touched. There can be any factor or condition of the environment that can harm a person, even if they do not touch them. People in a variety of environments can be exposed to physical hazards, including construction sites, whether it's a road or a building, demolition and excavation, as well as those who spend long periods outside. So these are your physical hazards. Some examples of physical hazards include heights, working at heights, loud noises and vibration as well, radiation, high exposure to sunlight or ultraviolet lights. Remember, we said that some physical can be seen and others cannot be seen. Extreme temperatures, fires, body stressing from repetitive or strenuous work, which we already discussed earlier, confined spaces with poor ventilation or contaminants, electricity, including electrical shock, and vibrations, which I mentioned as well. So, occupational hazards and how to mitigate them. We're moving now into mitigation and risk assessment as we progress. Chemical hazards, really precautions can be taken through various protective equipment, such as gloves. Again, I refer to what I said earlier, adequate and suitable. Adequate and suitable. PPE, personal protective gear, must be adequate for the task and suitable for the task and the person using that equipment. For example, if you have safety boots that don't fit, you've created a new hazard as well. And then goggles for any kind of fireworks, electrical works, masks for, to protect you from inhaling gases that are not good for you. And most importantly, employees must be well trained for handling such toxic substances. Again, all of these chemical, biological hazards all of these substances especially come with very, very detailed instructions on the level of danger, what the dangers are, and even recommendations on how to handle. Or not recommendations, they are not recommendations, they are instructions on how to handle. Biological hazards, it's critical to maintain hygiene at the workplace. Bacterial viruses can be perilous to health due to the use of protective equipment and everyday cleaning. It is essential to regulate the safety of the employees. For those of us who are working in the health sector or in catering, hospitality sector, this is critical for those of you in these sectors, just managing biological hazards, and then physical hazards are mitigated. Organizations need to make sure the workplace is well maintained and interior-based faults are sorted out to maintain the safety of the employees. So your physical hazards, as they're listed there, you look at those hazards, where are they present in your working environment or through your tasks that your employees undertake, and how do you mitigate them? So there we've talked about the hazards and ways to mitigate. So we're going to go into now workplace risk assessment. Basically, it's important to note that we always look at elimination of a hazard. We look at reducing the hazard, its exposure, reducing exposure to the hazard. We look at training. We look at controls. We look at PPE, we look at also administrative controls, and we look at engineering controls, for example. So why are risk assessments important? Carrying out suitable and sufficient risk assessments is the primary management tool in effective risk management. It is a legal requirement for any employer and must be documented wherever 5 or more people are employed. I would like to repeat this, but in the interest of time, I will just repeat a section of this. It is a primary management tool for effective risk management. You cannot manage your risks, and therefore you cannot make your workplace healthy and safe for yourself, your staff, your customers, your community, without doing risk assessments. And it is a legal requirement. As long as you employ more than 5 people, please undertake regular risk assessments. Risk assessment is a straightforward and structured method of ensuring the risks to health and safety and well-being of employees and others are suitably eliminated, reduced, or controlled. And the main purpose of risk assessments are to identify health and safety hazards. So we first identify the hazards, then we evaluate the risk presented within the workplace because of that hazard that is there. To evaluate the effectiveness and suitability of existing control measures. What do we already have in place? Is it enough? Can we do more? And then we ensure additional controls, including procedure. Maybe if we change the procedure, we do this before we do that, it can help. And these are implemented wherever the remaining risk is considered to be anything other than law. Yeah? So it's an ongoing process. We want to know, what are the hazards? What risk do they present? And here we are looking at risks in terms of likelihood and also the severity. So we have that kind of a matrix. The likelihood is high. If this thing happens, what is the severity? Is it fatal? Can it lead to fatality? Or serious injury or minor. If you have a risk that is like highly likely, so there's highly likely and low likely, high likely, medium, moderate likely. If something comes into high risk, fatality, you know immediately that's a red flag. It needs to be dealt with immediately. There is no time to waste or wait. And this kind of matrix also supports decisions that have to be made by management in terms of where there's a cost implication, what is a priority and what is not. Then we evaluate the effectiveness and suitability of what is already there. And if we find that it's wanting, it's not enough, people are still getting injured more than we like, or God forbid there's a fatality, then definitely things are not, it's not suitable. We have to do more. And then, as I said earlier, once we know all this, we add additional controls, and then we prioritize further resources if needed to ensure the three above are ticked as they are in this slide. So resources could mean financial resources, it could mean a consultant, it could mean buying additional personal protective gear, it could mean doing defensive driver training for your drivers that do driving for the job, and so on and so forth. There are a number of reasons why risk assessments are important in the workplace, not to mention the fact that they are a legal requirement. Risk assessments are crucial to preventing accidents in the workplace. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. We can't, and they also help with awareness. You see, when you do a risk assessment, and we're talking about education, information, training, it's always good to, as you train, to show these risk assessments. So people are further made aware of the fact that this hazard has this risk and can cause a fatality. Just always it's good for people to see how you came to this decision, why you've put these controls in place. Instead of just going and saying, oh, we've now from today, you have to wear this kind of helmet instead of the other one. If they know why, that this helmet is the correct one for a motorcycle, this one is the correct one for a construction site, and so on and so forth. So awareness is a large part of, or should be an output of a risk assessment. They reduce injuries and save lives. I don't think we need to labor that point. They help generate awareness about hazards in the workplace, and I've already talked about this. Organizations and employers being aware of hazards means injury is less likely to occur. Not only does this keep everyone safe and well, but it will additionally save the company money. Injured employees may require sick pay, time off, compensation. Health and safety executive could issue fines if they find you are in breach of the law. We also need to keep in mind that they help managers make decisions about risk. We always like to talk about evidence-based policies or evidence-based mitigations or interventions in the world of health and safety. We call it interventions. We want to intervene. We want to stop something from happening. And the only way we can do this effectively is if it's coming from a point of evidence, a point of data. We need to know, why are you suggesting this? And these issues come out very clearly as you do your risk assessment. There are several ways you do a risk assessment. You do observations, you do consultations with the staff, with the community, with visitors. You bring in experts. If you need a fire expert, for example, you bring that fire expert in. So, and then we also look at our records, incidents reports, medical reports. What is happening to our staff? Why are they always sick because of chest pain? and things like that. There is a place we did an audit, and one of the garden staff was using, I don't know what they're called, you know, the ones that we use to mow the, you know, to cut the grass, the small, they use petrol. I don't know what they're called, but they have a small rotation. And during that, this equipment hit a pebble in the grass, and that pebble went straight up and hit his eye, and he lost his eye. So you could, no one could have thought that could happen, for example, but that such things happen. So again, then you have to look again. If you have that record, you look again, what could we do better? So, so including identifying who is most at risk. So it's about helping managers make a decision about the risk and what else needs to be done and what resources are required to do it. It also helps identify who is most at risk. Who is most at risk? In some organizations, there's a lot of working at height. That is a very risky job. That is somebody most at risk. If there is an expectant mother or a person with disability, there are some tasks where they will be at a higher level of exposure to risk. So we know management needs the information to make decisions, but we also want to know who is at risk, right? And what can be done to ensure that the health and safety of all employers or employees is addressed. So how to do a risk assessment? A suitable and sufficient risk assessment must be carried out prior to a particular activity or task being carried out in order to eliminate, reduce, or suitably control any associated risk to the health, safety, and well-being of persons involved in the task or activity in question. So the risk assessment needs to be done before. We don't want to be in the business of being reactionary. We want to be proactive. We want to catch it before it happens. Well, at least as much as possible, we want to catch it before it happens. And then this is why you also have the continuous assessment. There's also audits, and then there's assessments. Audits are more regulatory in nature, but your assessments are also internal documents. They're internal documents, and that can be discussed a bit more, but today we'll just talk about risk assessment. Once completed, the risk assessment should be reviewed periodically, proportionate to the level of risk involved. Now, when you do a risk assessment, we also include who is at risk, what is currently in place. Remember what measures are already in place. What do we need to do? What action needs to be done to make it better? And who is going to do it and when they're going to do it. So it becomes a matrix, really. And so when we are talking about reviewing periodically, in that matrix, for example, the high-level priority areas, you might want to do them in 3 months because they're so high risk that you don't want to wait much longer. You need to do this quickly. And then others might be a little maybe medium and can be done in 6 months. Others may be in 8 months. So that is why the periodic review is important. You have to keep going back. Have we done this? And you find that even after you've done it, maybe the risk is still there. You have to again look for another control or mitigation method. Relevant risk assessments should be reviewed following an accident. So also, if you have a risk assessment and it was done in August of this year, and then last month, October, you had a serious injury and someone broke their leg, you have to go back immediately and redo the risk assessment. It could be just for that particular task, but a risk assessment must be done. Also, as I mentioned earlier, if there's any changes to the business, maybe you've introduced another operation, another service to your business, you must go back and repeat redo the risk assessment. If you have new employers, you must do a risk assessment because they all come with their different, and their training. And, part of risk assessment is also finding areas where training is required for the staff coming in or even existing staff, refresher trainings, and so on and so forth. So we recommend a 5-step process for completing a risk assessment. This is also can be used as a checklist to ensure the assessment is suitably comprehensive. Step 1, identify potential hazards. So, as I said, they may not always be obvious to some, but there are simple steps you take to identify hazards. So, number 1 is through observation, walking around your workplace and looking at what activities, what tasks, what processes, what substances used could harm your employees or others. So observation is key. Observation is key. And then looking back over past accidents and ill health records, as they may identify less obvious hazards. Yeah? So this is monitoring really and evaluation right now. You're monitoring records. You're keeping on top of them so that you see if there are any trends, any patterns that might ask you to question, why are we having more and more coughs? Why are we having more and more sick days from this particular group of staff, and so on and so forth. Consulting with employees and others who are carrying out the activities, tasks, or process. Remember, all staff, every member of staff requires to be consulted. It gives you the overall picture of what's going on throughout the very, very many activities that happen within your organization. It may also be useful to group the hazards into 5 categories, which we've looked at already. We named physical, chemical, biological, ergonomic, and psychological. So psychological is your mental health. Yeah. So step 2, we identify who might be harmed by those hazards. So now we know the hazards. Now we want to know who might be harmed by those hazards. So we identify who is most likely to be harmed by those potential hazards. It should also be noted how they could be affected, be it through direct contact or indirect contact. It is not necessary to list people by name, rather by identifying groups. For example, employees, contractors, customers, community, and so on and so forth. Some hazard may present a higher risk to certain groups, including children. So if, for example, you have a school, then you have children. Young people are usually youth. They're usually more risk takers than older people. And so they are treated in a different way when we talk about health and safety. They require more supervision, they require more training. So young people are also considered vulnerable because of their potential for risk. Their risk perception is still quite low. Then, of course, new or expectant mothers, new employees, home workers, and lone workers. So lone workers are often at quite high risk because they don't always have someone there ready to help them. So their training might need to be a little bit different than other workers. And so they're also considered vulnerable. And so we need to understand how any hazard will affect or if these kinds of workers under our care. Step 3 is to now evaluate the risk severity and establish the precautions. So remember, we said this is the hazard. This is the likelihood that this is a real risk, that I am exposed to risk within this place with these hazards. And then, should something happen, what's the severity? What's the worst case scenario? Fatality. Serious injury, then minor injury. Sometimes it's just loss of property, but we never say loss because we are running a business. Any loss is a cost to the company, right? So these are the different levels of severity. And of course, at all costs, we want to completely eliminate any severity that is equal to fatal or serious injury. And so once we've evaluated the risk, we then establish the precautions. So we know the hazard, we know the who might be affected, we evaluate the risk, and then we start putting in place the precautions. So this means that everything possible is done to ensure health and safety, considering all relevant factors, including likelihood that the harm may occur, severity of the harm that may occur, knowledge about eliminating or reducing or controlling the hazard and risks, availability of control measures designed to eliminate, reduce, or suitably control the risk. Then costs associated with the available control measures designed to eliminate, reduce, or suitably control the risk. So basically, we are now almost developing a kind of action matrix. So we have the risk assessment. Now we're looking at an action matrix by looking into now what are these, what control measures are suitable for this risk and for that risk and for the other risk. What are the costs associated with this action matrix, with these actions? And then what's the duration? What is the timeline within which we want to do this? If it can cause fatality, we want to do it within 3 months or less. If it's a low, minor injury, we can, you can push it down 6-8 months and so on and so forth. But of course, balancing the cost issues because costs are costs. They are, cost of doing business, but they're costs, and they have to be earmarked for these health and safety activities. And that's why we needed that commitment right from the top of the chain. Assessing the severity of a risk requires an evaluation of the likelihood and how substantial consequences that it may cause. So we look at some of the key factors, the duration. You see, if I'm on the road driving a truck from Kampala to Malaba, my exposure to a road accident is much high because I'm on the road much longer. If I'm driving from Kololo to maybe Seta, it might not be the exposure. So we look at the duration of that activity. The duration is a key indicator here. We look at the frequency of exposure. How frequently are you exposed? Do you do this activity once in a month, or do you do it every day? We look at the number of persons. Is it one staff, or are there 20 or 6 staff doing this? And then we look at the competence of those exposed. Are they fit to do the job? Are they physically fit to do the job? Have they been trained to do the job? Do they know how to use the equipment? Do they know how to get themselves out of trouble if there is trouble? And so on and so forth. And then we also look at the type of equipment and the condition of equipment. With many workplaces, it is important that certain types of equipment are maintained, and there should be maintenance records of all equipment at a workplace, whether it's a hoist or a lift. We need to see the maintenance records, whether it's a generator whether it's a vehicle, we need to see and to keep maintenance records. So we know the condition of our equipment, whether it's firefighting equipment, it also has the provision either annually or every 6 months, depending on the equipment, where it's supposed to be maintained. And these are very, very, very important. Maintaining equipment is critical in our operations. And then, of course, as mentioned before, the availability of first aid provision and or emergency support. Emergency support is making sure that you have the police nearby, the nearest police station by your workplace is aware of you, you have a relationship, and you can call on them to support you. Now, when I say relationship, I don't mean a personal relationship. I mean that they are aware of your business and even what risks you might have. And they're actually part and parcel of when you're doing your risk assessments. It's good. When I spoke about consulting, you also consult with those government entities that can support your health and safety mitigation and emergency response. Step 4 is now we're going to implement the changes and record our findings. If a workplace has 5 or more individuals, the findings of a risk assessment are required to be kept either electronically or in writing. Now, if we don't manage our records, whether it's maintenance records or risk assessment records, maintenance of equipment, or medical information, we cannot, if we are not able to keep our records well, we can never be able to refer back. And referring back is a key thing in constant learning and improvement, which is like a motto for health and safety. As I said earlier, there's never a time where we can say, oh, we're all good now, there's no more risk in our organization. That doesn't happen at all. So recording your findings is an easy way to keep track of the risks, the measures put in place, and that they've been implemented. We talked about earlier doing an assessment and it sits gathering dust, or a policy that sits it's necessary to reassess all controls. A good guide as to when you significant change within the workplace or process in question, then you need to do a review. After an accident or ill health incident has occurred, you need to go back. After near misses have been reported, you need to go back. Now, near misses is an interesting word. I've always found it interesting, but also because it shows the level of detail that is required in managing health and safety at the workplace. Just the sheer level of detail. And that's why for health and safety professionals, we even record near misses. So a near miss, for example, is somebody slipped but didn't fall, didn't get injured at all, but they slipped and managed to get their balance back. That's called a near miss. And it is recorded and it is looked into. It's not just, oh, thank God we didn't fall. You go and you see, why did I nearly get injured? You see the level of depth. So we're not talking about I got injured. You even want to know why were you almost injured, to make sure that an injury never comes. Because once there's a near miss, it means in a just a matter of time, it will actually happen. For example, if someone is driving a truck or a car and you have a very sharp maneuver and you're trying to avoid something, that is also investigated. Now, for those companies that have, for example, onboard computers on their vehicles that are used for work, they can record a very sharp maneuver. And once a sharp maneuver is seen, they will ask the driver to explain that sharp maneuver. Now you'll find usually it's, they're trying to avoid something, or even sharp braking, if you brake very, very sharply. So these are all called near misses. An accident did not occur, an incident did not occur, but it nearly did. And that is enough to say we have to review and put in measures in place. So even near misses must be recorded. First of all, reported and then recorded. Reporting is important. Remember again that if people are not comfortable reporting, you will never build that culture of safety. If people feel, if I say that I had an injury, I had an accident, I'll not get in trouble, they will not report. And the entire mission to have a safe and healthy workplace as a culture, as a way of behavior for the company, and not just for compliance. That will only happen if people feel comfortable to come to their boss, their supervisor, and say, you know what, yesterday I almost hit this, or yesterday this happened. That way we have that open communication, and it's when we report that we understand what could have gone wrong, and we're then able to assess, investigate, assess, and then put in place the required adequate and suitable controls. Okay, so I think we also want to talk about designing a comprehensive occupational health and management system. Now, for this, I will not go into too much depth because the health and management system is based on all of the other things that we've discussed today, and it's after all of those are in place. In the beginning, remember this is a continuous process that you also then develop your health and safety management systems. So I'll talk about this a little bit, and then we can look at a few examples possibly of how a risk assessment is, is designed, and maybe just a few maybe one or two lines in terms of the hazard, the who, the what, the how, and responsibility, and so on and so forth. So basically, when we look at the design of designing a comprehensive occupational health and health management system, we're looking at efficiency. Anytime we have systems in place, they are supposed to support efficiency. We can do things haphazard, do this, and it's not tied to that, and it's not, but a system allows for a systemic approach. You're approaching something in a way that is scientific, that has flow, that is logical, that supports, captures all the information and stores it well, that supports decision making, as we said earlier, that supports training, awareness, that supports what kind of controls you want to do, to put in place, that supports your compliance and, your level of compliance, because to show that you're compliant, there are some systems and some things you have to show to the regulator. So all of these are part and parcel of a efficient health management system. And they should be tailored to the organization, because as I've been saying, that we all come from different sectors, different types of businesses, and our hazards are very different. The basics remain the same. The basics, the approach remains the same, but the content will change here and there. So it should be specific for the activities within that organization, the processes of the organization, the culture of the organization, the environment of the organization. And for example, there's a client who in the past had an operation, and right next to their operation, there was a school, a big school, quite big school, about 1,200 children. And the kitchen to this school, the school's kitchen, was right at the fence with the client's generators. And these were heavy duty generators, huge generators with a lot of fuel. And just across a very small, thin wall was a kitchen full of firewood to feed 1,200 staff, children, and of course the staff. And you can imagine that this was highlighted immediately as a major risk, because it just couldn't continue that way. At any point, we would have a fire started, and it would include these children that are at school. So that's why I'm talking about the environment. Now, what else is going around you? It's not enough to focus on just your compound, but what are the hazards just around you? So those things must all be taken into consideration. And as you see, so the health and safety management system really can be, to a good degree, it should be tailored to the business and all of these factors. So that being said, there are some key facets that should underpin any well-designed occupational health management system. And these are some of those. I'll just highlight some of them. So, of course, the health and management system must address very clearly the fact that it's all issues to do with health and safety. Remember the hazards, the categories within the hazards, the type of risks, and all of that should be captured in the health and safety management system. We also need to look at the kind of equipment or the platform under which these health and management systems will be held. Is it electronic? Ideally, it should be electronic, but other ways can be looked into so that to enable proper records keeping, reminders when it's time to apply for permits which have expired. All of these things are important, and they should be well represented or captured in the management health systems. We also then, in the health and management systems, we talk about training and education. I'm sure, for example, CNOOC has this in their health and safety management system or their training systems. They know that over this period of time, we're going to hold this many trainings, and the trainings will be for this and that, for fire, for working at heights, for working in confined spaces, and so on and so forth, for firefighting, for first aid, and that these trainings are captured in this system. We also need to look at or capture the policies and procedures. The policies and procedures. The policies we've discussed already, but the procedures, there are several types of procedures. There's permit to work, which I've already discussed. The safe method of work. where the method is actually outlined very clearly. And so all of these procedures and policies or methods must be captured. Then, of course, the risk assessment must be captured in the health and management system. It should be there because it is a guiding document, it's a live document, it's a working document. And then we have also emergency preparedness and response plans. So earlier we talked about evacuation plans, response plans, drills. Drills are very critical. We've found many times that drills are not undertaken as often as they should. So drills are important in when we're talking about emergency preparedness. You cannot be prepared if you did a drill 10 years ago and all your staff have changed and there's a fire and we don't know what to do. So the emergency preparedness and response plans are critical. And then finally, safety monitoring and auditing. Monitoring is an ongoing process. So I'd like to also add here the word evaluation. So we have to monitor, we audit. Audits are usually done by a third party. Monitoring is internal monitoring. Management, top management monitoring that the H&S health and safety policy is being adhered to, is being implemented, and that the actions, activities to promote and improve health and safety are being monitored, that there's progression, that things haven't stopped, that resources are dedicated to make sure that these mitigation measures are in place. Then we have our audits. Audits could come from any external party. Government agencies are free to audit any company as they so choose. And of course, then evaluation. As I've said, evaluation is important because it allows us to know if we have been effective, if we have met our goal, if we have achieved our goal of reducing, eliminating, or controlling the hazards and the risks that present themselves at our workplaces. So with that said, we're happy to take on a few more questions or comments. Thank you very, very much for your time and for listening in. Thank you very much. And thank you to CNOOC for holding health and safety at an extremely high level within your company's operations. Thank you.
I thank you for that very elaborate explanation and that elaborate lecture. I'm very sure our viewers out there are watching and learning. Now we will go back to the other questions. There are questions that were sent in by our viewers. Let's first start with these ones. Someone is asking, Gerard, I don't know whether this was answered, but what are some common health and safety hazards in the workplace? How do we identify potential hazards before they cause harm? Can you share examples of effective hazard prevention strategies? I think, how can we promote a culture of safety and accountability among team members? Then, what should be included in a health and safety checklist for our specific environment, especially that one of people in the oil and gas? How can we assess whether our current safety measures are effective? Then someone here is asking, I don't know whether this is a question you will answer. What are the legal responsibilities for both employers and employees regarding health and safety. Then I think this one, how should employees respond if they notice a health or safety risk? What are the most effective ways to communicate safety protocol to everyone? I think you can answer those as they keep sending in more questions. Keep sending in more questions, send in comments. You know, we started this like on Monday last week, and I'm sure you must be having comments, appreciations, and all that feedback. We're really interested in all that feedback. Yeah, thank you. You can now respond to this question.
Okay, so we've got a number of questions, and you know, talking about how we identify hazards. I can take us back to an earlier slide in the presentation. We categorize hazards over three main categories: physical, chemical, biohazards. And so over these, we've given some we've given some listed some of the types of hazards you find under chemicals or biohazards or physical hazards. So that again is really, once you look at those lists, for example, for bio, you're looking at medical waste, you're looking at agro waste, some plants, venom from snakes, insects, and others. And then chemical, you're looking at clinic products, gases, and other such hazards. Physical, you're looking at road accidents, you're looking at different aspects of environment as well. So all of these are taken care of in that list. Unfortunately, I'm trying to go back to that slide to show you, but I'm not able to just now. I'll try and do that in a minute. So that's how we look at the hazards. They are categorized, and we have a list. I'm sure this will be, this video remains with you. You can always go back and have a look through. Those hazards have been categorized and listed across the different categories. So in terms of legal responsibility for both the worker and the employee, the employee and the employer, the onus is always on the employer. Now, someone else has asked about safety culture, which I touched on as well. Safety culture can be promoted by showing a level of commitment right from the very top of the organization, the top office of the organization, and making sure that there's constant supervision, constant training where training is required, and provision of equipment that is adequate and suitable. So if an employer has done all of these, you have trained and you're using equipment that is maintained properly, that is fit for purpose, if you've provided standardized, suitable, adequate personal protective gear, for example, if you have systems and methods such as permit to work, where it's an in more depth process to allow someone to do that specific task or activity. If you feel really everything is done, then one can look at the employee. But I would like to stress that legally, the responsibility, well over 95%, I believe, falls with the employer. It falls with the employer. It is your job to do everything you can to control, mitigate, and manage the hazards and the risk exposure of your customers, your staff, anybody that is at your workplace, your contractors. By the way, even a contractor, it is still the person contracting, the company contracting this stuff. So there you're looking at contractual contract management, which Michael talked about. What are those clauses? By the way, even in contracts, there are clauses that are specific to health and safety. Look at those measures. Otherwise, you'll have a contractor who has an injury at work and it's on your premises and it comes back to you. When it's a court case, you go with your contractor, but the onus is on you. So as much as possible, take leadership, take full responsibility. Do not think too much of legal employee-employer. Let that not be something that features too much in your mind. Just think my responsibility, my people, my responsibility. And as you do that, that culture, they also know that you're doing everything you can do. They see it, they appreciate it, and they also start to fall into place in that culture that you want to set. Now, someone was talking about how employees can present their grievances or complaints. And I think there are several ways that this can be done. I've talked about, actually it's a legal requirement that we have health and safety representatives within the workforce, that we have health and safety committees, and these are perfect ways, perfect platforms, if you like, where staff can talk to their peers who are these representatives. It's often easier for staff to talk to their peers and not to the boss. But of course, some bosses have a very open door policy and are very engaged with their staff, and the staff feel free to speak directly on any issues, even those that are difficult to speak about. So the other thing that can be done that is practiced a lot is toolbox sessions. And this is a dedicated time for an organization, and all the staff, the contractors, everybody who is on site comes together to discuss health and safety issues, and usually an agenda is set, and also constant training. And these are all the opportunities that staff have to give feedback, to give grievances, observations, their experiences, their near misses. All of these are ways that can be done. The other way that I hadn't touched on already is a grievance box or a complaint box. Most organizations have this, and they're very important because it allows, should someone not want to be identified for whatever they are trying to share, that it's anonymous. So one can just go and drop a note in a grievance box, and no need to put a name or anything. And those are often also very, very, very handy in terms of people being able to feel that they can express their concerns without feeling that they'll be punished by a supervisor or another colleague for communicating what their concern is. Any other questions?
I think we will continue with this engagement online. I see very many people are interested and asking quite a number of questions, but because of the time, I request that you continue following these videos on that YouTube channel. They will always be there. Remember, we have also been live on Twitter, streaming live on Twitter via Vectra Energy. It is an account that has a blue tick. It is verified. So, ladies and gentlemen, our viewers, all those that are managing SMOs, members of those SMOs that have been following us from the day that we began on 28th, we thank you for being here. We thank you for following. We thank you for learning. And we thank you for being very good very, very good people that have really appreciated what CNOOC has done for you. Remember, this has been the CNOOC Online Enterprise Development Program, and this is a continuous program that will continue every year. Every year we'll be having a very exciting engagement program for you to learn. Remember, some people were asking whether they'll get certificates and all that. I'm sure Vectra Energies and CNOOC will work out a plan, and those that have been here constantly engaging will get their certificates. All we need is some feedback from you. We want testimonies from you. We want to know whether you have learned something and you have really changed and you're doing things that are now verified and you are very compliant, because it's been a good time. People have been learning. Consultants have been really lecturing. Consultants have been giving you hints on how to do good business, on how to deal with CNOOC and other companies in the oil and gas sector. This was organized specifically for you to do business. As a Ugandan, you need to be proactive and you need to achieve something from the oil and gas sector. I thank you for being here with us. We continue with our conversation online on both Twitter and YouTube. Or you can engage Vectra Energy inbox if you have any inquiries, if you have any other queries. But remember, all that has been happening here will be on our YouTube link. Follow the YouTube link. We'll even share some short videos of some of these lectures that you have been viewing right here. I thank you for being here. We thank CNOOC Uganda and CNOOC International. I don't know how they call it, but CNOOC in general for sponsoring this training. We thank you so much. For God and my country, I remain Michael Wailer for you here.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas.